Now you've seen the exterior montage and this lovely blue paint. And one of the things that caught me off guard about driving around Toronto is its level of traffic and congestion. I thought Chicagoland was bad. This is on a different level. And I was afraid that this car would be a boat, that it would be difficult to drive and park in the city, and it's not. It's a really good shape and proportion. It's not too wide, it's not too long, and they haven't shrunk the dimensions down enough where it kind of looks like an Oompa Loompa. Now on to the more important part, the interior space. And when you start speccing this out with the better interior, it has a huge wow factor. And I've been in a lot of cars and I still have to say this impresses me. You know, the G80 and the G90 were good, but this has a little bit of youthfulness. It has some sporty elements without relying on gimmicks. The first thing is these quilted leather seats with the red cross stitching in it. And at first I'm like, it's kind of weird. It reminds me of a booth in a pizza restaurant, but I really like it. The seats are super supportive, it's super comfortable, and the perforations in the leather are great for the seat cooler, which works tremendously good on your back and on your thigh area. So if you're hot under the collar, you're gonna like that. Now, as I started nosing around the cabin, I could not help but admire some of the material choices in here. There's alloys in the door around the speaker grills. There's leather on the center console area, on the upper dash. The stitching's tasteful, the steering wheel design and all the buttons are extremely high quality. And I nearly went in convulsions because I could not find any piano gloss black plastic. And I could not believe this until I found a small piece of it. But it's so small that I'm gonna give them an award for finally giving up on that crap. So well done there. All right, now you're waiting for the negatives, and don't worry, they are coming, but I feel like this is the best Genesis interior they've done yet. It may not be the most high quality, but it's the best balance between ergonomics, style, and luxury. And I just like the way everything's laid out. The ergonomics are excellent. The steering wheel, again, is great. It has a power up and down and telescoping feature, memory seats, which pretty much every car in this class has. All the knobs and buttons and switches are logical here. They kind of take what worked really well in the legacy days, volume knob, or a rotary tuning knob, which is disappearing. Your HVAC controls are rotary knobs, and they feel okay. They feel a little plasticky, but all the buttons are logically laid out to use here. So that's one of the best parts of this Genesis interior. If you're coming from older cars, you're gonna kind of really just fall in here and appreciate it right away. All right. Technology, have to talk about it because that's what everybody wants and they keep packing more in here. Now, in terms of infotainment, this is the same that you're going to find in every Hyundai and Kia. There's nothing special about it at all, and I think it's a lost opportunity to kind of customize it for the Genesis brand, but I know they're probably going to do that eventually and figure it out. But the good thing is the Hyundai UI works well. It's quick, my phone pairs up every time, the mapping software works, there's no freeze-ups, there's no lag. The EQ for the sound system, there's enough options here to kind of keep you happy, to tweak it the way you want. The sound is good in here, it's a quiet cabin, of course. Aside from this annoying and disgusting stuck-on screen that looks like a total afterthought, and I know every company's doing this, I feel like the bezels are huge in here, much like it was in the Stinger. I hated it. I feel like they need to do a little bit more design in it. Take a look at what LG and Samsung's doing with their phones in terms of bezels. Kind of recreate it here. Cover it in leather. Do something aside from just sticking a plastic chunk on the dashboard. Now the gauge cluster. It's kind of old school. It looks classic. The speedometer and tachometer are more analog looking, even though it's kind of digital behind it. It has a center LCD panel that has great graphical design. For example, when you turn the drive mode selector, it kind of lights up the edge of the gauges. It gives it a more three-dimensional look. And they still use bezels around the gauges, which looks way better than a lot of companies that just stick a giant screen up there. It looks like a chalkboard. This does it really well. Now, the negative part is you got to do a lot of menu jumping. There's no on and off button on the side, a physical button to turn your HUD on, which is weird because there's a spot for it, and there's physical buttons for lane keep assist and blind spot monitoring. So it would be nice if they put it there, but the menu jumping isn't too bad. When you get in here and you get used to this, you kind of set it and forget it and never touch it again. Now with technology, there's always going to be confusing things, and Genesis has put the effort to make all the physical knobs and buttons easy to use. And then you realize it does not tell you your temperature control or fan speed down here at all. You have to look at the touchscreen. And that may not be an issue, except when you get in here on a hot day, you start up the car and the infotainment's still booting up and you don't know what your temperature is. You got to wait for it to come up here. You don't know what your fan speed is, and it's really frustrating. And one of the things I think of immediately, if you're somebody that keeps a car for a long time, when this screen breaks eventually, you're not going to be able to control your HVAC. And it's one of those things that makes no sense. They could easily put a display down here to show you what it is. It could look really nice as well. They went through the extra step to also remove the analog clock from this car. So, I mean, they have a lot of things right, and they're moving forward, but it's just one of those little things that you gotta nitpick. All right, before I continue my tour of the Toronto metropolitan area, the interior space of the G70 is really good. I mean, you're gonna get in here and you're gonna probably share a lot of the same sentiments as me. The build quality is good, it's solid, there's no creaks or rattles, and you know this car's been beat to the max by people of the press. The seats are good, the back seats are really well laid out. I mean, it's just a nice place to be, namely when you're driving around like I have been. Now enough of that, let's head to one of Mississauga's premier repair shops and take a look at the underbody. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, you're looking good.
Thanks, man, appreciate it. A little dirty after a whole day's work, but
this is what a real shop looks like. Not these perfect service centers you see on TV where it's got like white everything that's never been
white
touched.
lab coat,
Right,
you know, yeah.
Yeah, so obviously we're looking at the Genesis G70 and I'm in Mississauga.
Yeah, Mississauga.
Mississauga. Well, you can tell I'm from America. I don't know anything. I'm just dumb.
Yeah.
So tell me about your shop.
A little two-bay shop in Mississauga. No, it's a cute little place. Building been here since 1968. My old man took the place over in '80, and I've been running it now for a couple of years. And I don't know, it's a blast. Better than sitting at a desk all day. No offense.
Well, how long have you been doing it for?
Oh, I've been here since I was 10. 26 now. So.
Do you hate cars?
I absolutely. Oh God, despise them.
What's the worst brand in terms of problems and nonsense?
I'm gonna say it's a spectrum.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say it goes from imports are the best over to domestics, kind of in the middle, and German. Don't like the German cars.
Okay.
Expensive, unreliable, and the owners are something else.
All right. Well, he's allowing me to use his shop to put this lovely Canadian G70 Genesis all-wheel drive up on the lift, and we're gonna take a look. Thanks again for helping out.
No problem.
Appreciate it. Welcome to the underbody segment of the Genesis G70. This is the Genesis architecture that has been shrunk down from the G80. So the front half of the car, the carrier, the subframe, and the rear half of the car, the subframe, is also different. That's why this vehicle weighs a little bit less. It's more sprightly when you drive it. And it's supposed to be kind of that entry or more entry-level luxury car from the Genesis brand. Now, when you look at the suspension, from the G80 they had double wishbone, so they've kind of eliminated that here for packaging, but you still have the split lower control arm design that is also shared with the Kia Stinger. This is identical to the Kia Stinger's suspension, everything here. You have adjustable dampers. In terms of user selectability, you have two modes, but the ECU is constantly adjusting the rebound and compression of these. It's always adjusting it no matter what mode you select. When you choose comfort, it will only go on the softer side. When you choose sport, it will go on the firmer side, but there's not a huge difference. You're not really gonna notice a huge difference in damping for normal driving. The entire lower assembly is aluminum, both lower control arms. Your hub is aluminum, the knuckle is aluminum, and the upright is aluminum as well. But you know, the struts are what you would normally see on regular cars, with the exception of a vibration isolation damper on the upper half of the strut. Now we're going to work our way to the back of the car. Before I do that, you can see, like many cars, they just cover the whole underbody of this, which I'm not going to remove. The only thing that you can access is the oil filter, which just removes with one clip, but you have to drop a panel to get to the drain plug, which is not too uncommon anymore. Now that I'm in the back, I'm going to talk about the all-wheel drive system and the transmission logic on the G70. And thankfully, Patrick from Genesis in Canada supplied me this car, the rep, and I was able to ask him direct questions about some of the behavior of this without having to go through a bunch of drama to get technical questions answered, so I really appreciate that. In terms of the all-wheel drive system, this is a little bit more rear bias capable than the G80 and the G90 is. It's capable of, in sport mode, transferring 100% of the torque to the back. Now obviously it's not going to do that all the time, but pretty much in sport mode it's going to vary between 80% to the rear, 70 to 80% to the rear. Now during normal driving it's going to be about 60-40 in like your comfort and sport or comfort and smart modes. So really if you're looking for the most rear wheel drive biased of this car, you need to go into sport mode. Now the rear is just, it's what you see in a multi-link. You have aluminum upper control arms, you have stamped steel lower control arms, you have covers for aerodynamics that flow the air over the rear bumpers to a vented portion of the rear bumper, which is vented because it prevents parachuting. But for the most part, there's a lot of attention to detail here for aerodynamic purpose. You know, but again, it's the same as the Kia Stinger in terms of suspension layout. I mean, you can look at them back to back. There's nothing different here. All right, last but not least, and I'm going to talk about this in greater detail during the driving segment, is the transmission operation. This has the same 8-speed automatic transmission that's in the G80 with a 3.3 liter turbo. And this is, I believe, the third iteration of the 8-speed, and they've shrunken it down, they've made it more efficient. And you can see here, when we first looked at the G80 a long time ago when it launched, it was a lot more massive in terms of the transpan and the overall length of it. Now, where it differs from the G80 Sport is the transmission logic has been changed in terms of software. It's all software. The transfer case, the transmission is identical to the G80 and same in the Stinger. But the logic for shift patterns in terms of upshifting, downshifting, rev matching, and speed of upshifting and downshifting in sport mode is much quicker here because they know people are going to drive it in a more aggressive manner. Now, the negative parts of it are it's still not lightning fast like some of the competitors, and you only get true manual control of this transmission in sport mode. You have to be in sport mode and you have to have traction and stability control off. And I asked Patrick from Genesis why you have to go through all of that to get full control. And he said, well, it's a safety thing. They don't want people bouncing off the rev limiter on accident from pulling a paddle. And but they're maybe trying to rework it so you only have to disable traction control and not completely stability control to get all that, the fun aspect of it. But that's pretty much it for the underbody segment. If you want to know more detail on this motor, check out our G80 3.3 liter turbo video and the Kia Stinger, where you can see much of the same thing that's here. Let's take this for a drive. Welcome to a review on the G70, the Canadian G70, and it wouldn't be a review in Canada without having some guests.
Oh, hello there.
Oh, dear God.
Oh, it's you!
How did this happen?
I don't even know.
You guys live here?
Best Uber ever.
Where am I at?
Cliche Corner.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's the perfect time to do a little bit of driving, isn't it?
Perfect time to do a little bit of a send. Is this your first time here?
It is my very first time in Canada, if you can believe it.
Are you enjoying yourself so far?
So far, yes, and it's mostly because I have two people that have been extremely hospitable to me. And I'm talking about you two.
Kind of figured.
All right, nobody wants to hear that.
No.
Let's talk about some car business, shall we?
Yes.
All right.
This is your show. Go for it.
The Genesis G70. I'm gonna kind of lay this out for you because this is a popular vehicle. People are excited about it because this is kind of a new thing for Genesis to create a sporty-ish luxury sedan. And one of the things you want to know about a car like this is how does it ride, how does it handle, how does it perform? So let's talk about the ride quality. This is somewhere between the Genesis G80 and the Kia Stinger, and I know, of course, Genesis doesn't want to hear that, but it's on the same platform. It's softer, it's more compliant, it's more responsive, and it feels more solid in the back end. And you notice it right away when you're driving this, that there's a directness and lightness that's here that's not in the Genesis G80. So that's one of the reasons why you would choose this over the G80. Now, why you wouldn't choose it is it's nowhere near as solid. It's nowhere near as soft and compliant as the G80. This doesn't feel as much of a luxury car as that. But, you know, because of the smaller dimensions, the less weight, you just feel more engaged driving it. And engaged is relative to who you are, because this is not a this is not a high performance car. So let's get into what I mean by that. I'm in the Genesis G70 and I am on track, but I'm not really on track. This is kind of a parade lap to see what the acceleration is and just kind of some of the dynamics you can't do on the road. I'm gonna say this right up front, this is not a track car and you shouldn't drive it like that, but it's a good way to feel just how the acceleration is so strong. With the 3.3 liter, this twin turbo motor is amazing. I mean, it takes absolutely no time at all to get this thing up to 150 kilometers an hour. It just flies, but it also gives you this false sense of confidence, because when you really start to push it, it kind of understeers first and then oversteers. So, I mean, you just have to be more deliberate with it. It still feels like a very heavy car, but they've done a good job compared to the G80 of making it feel lighter, more dynamic. And I think you're gonna be really happy driving this as like that everyday luxury car and something you could smoke some fools with. Oh, even the transmission is so much better than the G80 Sport. It really does respond. I mean, it's not lightning fast, but it's just quick enough not to raise any red flags. So I think, you know, long story short, this is a great cruiser with a little bit of performance edge that you're going to enjoy driving every day for your mundane tasks, and then you can have just enough fun to be dangerous. Final thoughts on the Genesis G70 twin turbo V6 all-wheel drive. And one of the good things about this, you can spec it out the same in Canada as you can in the US. And it's this multifunctional machine. What I mean by that is they found a really good balance between trying to attempt to be a sporty sedan that gives you the performance and the power, and then trying to give you the luxury side. And I talk about this a lot. When you try to combine all of this together, there's compromises. And there has to be, because you can't make one car this amazing high performance machine and then not have some trade-offs in the luxury or comfort department. When you look at the interior space, really well done. In fact, this is one of the better vehicles in the price point in terms of use of materials. They didn't overly rely on any one thing, and of course there's no glossy black plastic in here, which is amazing. Now, in terms of driving performance, I was lucky enough to have this on track, which really wasn't track. I wasn't pushing it like I would. It was more of a test to see acceleration. And I think if you want the G70, you owe it to yourself to really drive the twin turbo, because this is the best thing about this car. Most people that are coming from, you know, regular V6 or 4-popper turbos, this annihilates those. And I think it really is exciting. Now, in terms of handling dynamics with the all-wheel drive system, it works really well. It's not the best in terms of like overall, you know, this is not a sports car, but it tries to emulate some of those characteristics. It still understeers way too much for my liking. It's more on the safe side. So if you're looking for this rear-wheel drive bias car, it's not gonna be that. But again, compromise, right? You can't have everything. And that kind of leads me into the last part of this. Some of the negatives. They're behind in the transmission department still in terms of programming. It's not the quickest transmission to shift, upshift, downshift. It is mostly good in terms of smoothness, but again, if you're looking for like German levels of ZF transmission performance, that's not this. It favors the slower, softer shifts. Again, you may not even notice it, but it's something to talk about. And the last thing is, you know, style and character. And I think the G70 is missing a little bit of that. Although with this blue color, that kind of matches the way I'm dressed, I liked it. But again, it's not overly aggressive and it's not compromise. That's what I feel this is all about. It does everything really well. I think take it for a drive if you're looking at like the 3 Series or some of the competitors. It's a damn good first attempt. Big thanks to the StraightPipes for helping, and Patrick from Genesis in Canada, who actually knows his shit. So thanks again. See you next time.
I have another question for you.
Yeah.
You tend to not tell people to subscribe and hit the notification bell.
Why don't you do that?
I don't, because I feel like if people want to subscribe, they're going to do it on their own.
Subscribe.
Subscribe
Don't forget
to
to
his
subscribe
channel.
to Savage Geese.
Subscribe to this channel.
He won't say it, but we will.
This channel, the one that you're watching it, not this one. What the fuck is that?
Thanks, guys. That's US dollars. That's not the Canadian stuff.
Oh,
I
wow.
could probably buy half a prowler with this.
Yeah, pretty much. Wow. Do you like the driving position?
I do. I like these seats, and I like when you go into sport mode, the bolsters tighten. So
Yeah, I remember that now.
Yeah.
there's little things that they've done here that is really good and positive. And overall, I'd say this is an amazing car for what they've been able to do. And of course, our job and a lot of the things we do is we look at the things that are good and bad and the things they could improve on. And I hate to focus on that as much, but this is a really good car.
Can you do a visor test for us?
No.
3, 2, 1.
He didn't do it. Ah, he passed.
Scared me there for a second.